Alrighty, so I just got back from Japan and I took some photos and some videos that I really like. And they were all with a micro four thirds camera, the Lumix GX85, which is kind of mind blowing. And when I was thinking about what camera I wanted to take on this trip, I had to go kind of through the list and think like, okay, what would be best for this situation? What would be best for this specific location? And kind of weave through my thoughts of which camera should I actually bring. But I'm so glad I landed on the GX85. And I think the big reason is, well, actually, let me break it down. There are two huge pros, in my opinion, and two hesitations that I had. So let's talk about those individually. So the first huge pro is size, weight, portability, versatility. So when I think about the Lumix GX85, it's the perfect travel camera for me, minus one thing, which we'll talk about later. But I can always have it around my neck. I never get tired. It doesn't fatigue me. There are so many lenses available. I recently made a video about that 45 to 150 that I picked up. I'm so glad I did. Some of my favorite photos from this trip were with that lens. And so I was covered from 24 millimeters to 300 millimeters, which is kind of insane. Like, especially if you think about it from full frame terms, like those would have been massive and heavy lenses to lug around all day. And then if you don't use one of them, it feels like a big waste. Like my shoulders and my back are killing me and I didn't even use the 70 to 200. So yeah, not only is it super comfortable to wear, but there's just so many different situations where you can capture exactly what you want to capture with the kit that you have on you. And so then the second thing that I think is a huge pro are the video capabilities and the IBIS. And I can kind of combine those two things because sometimes, especially in like airports or buses or trains or whatever, like when I'm actually doing the travel, not to the destination where I am traveling, I don't want to feel like I'm having to fumble around with stuff, like something for photo, something for video. Like I want one device. And for me, it's never the Sony a7 IV. Whenever I am traveling, I just leave that in my backpack. Sometimes I'll break it out if I feel like I'm going to be, sitting in a terminal for a while or something like that. But if I'm walking around, I don't want to have that on my neck. But with the GX85, I do. I have it on my neck. I have it like readily available for any photos or videos or any inspiration that I see. And so there were some, and I'll either put them here, I'll already have them in the beginning, but there are some like videos I took in the taxi cab that I really love. I just feel like that's something I wouldn't have captured with my Sony a7 IV. So yeah, just really glad that I was able to have that, really grateful to have this camera. But let's talk about some of the hesitations, some of the reasons that I was like, maybe I should leave that home. So autofocus was the number one thing. That's not true. The other thing is the number, but I'll start with autofocus. Autofocus was a big hesitation for me at first because the Sony autofocus is so good. It's an incredible camera, and I think when I was first thinking about Japan and traveling and going for the first time and trying to capture those moments, I was like, well, do I want to take the best of the best? Not the best of the best, but my best of my best, if that makes sense, the best that I have. And I was thinking, full frame, incredible autofocus. I have a decent selection of lenses. Like, I should just take my Sony. Great photos, great videos. I know this camera inside and out. Like, why wouldn't I take it? But then as I thought about it more, I've never missed a shot on the Lumix GX85 because the autofocus was bad. And because we were going to be playing the role of, my partner and I were going to be playing the role of tour guides more so than I was going to be playing the role of photographer, it made more sense to bring something that was going to be convenient, something that I was always going to have on me and that I could always be ready to take a photo with, because those moments were pretty fleeting. Like, we would be walking down the street and I would see something, or we would be in the train and I would, pop over to the other window or something like that. Like, it just felt like a lot of these things that I ended up capturing were a little bit more spontaneous and not necessarily planned. And because of that, I don't think that the difference in autofocus was a reason to bring the Sony a7 IV over the Lumix GX85. And so I was able to kind of write that one off. But then the other one, which I think is the bigger factor, something that kind of like stuck with me for a while as I was making this decision, is the weather sealing. And I've talked about it before in other videos. I think if this camera, the Lumix GX85, if it had weather sealing, it might be a perfect travel camera, but then it would be more expensive and lots of other things, maybe even bigger, heavier, whatever. So we deal with it. And I think the reason that this one was a little bit harder to shake for me than the autofocus is because when we went to London earlier this year, I took the Fujifilm X Pro 3 and it poured. Like, it rained and rained, and I guess maybe because it was just my partner and I, like, we were out in the rain. Like, yeah, we had umbrellas, but we weren't like ducking into shops to just kind of like hide away from it. And if I would have taken the GX85, I'm not sure if it would have survived that kind of downpour. But when I was thinking about it more, that wasn't really the goal of our trip to Japan. So my partner and I were going with my parents, and if it were to start pouring, we weren't just going to be out in the rain. Like, we would have found somewhere indoors to kind of hide away for a bit. And so I think with that thought, and with the idea that I could bring, it's not there right now, but usually my Peak Design sling is over there. So I brought my Peak Design sling and I brought the packable Peak Design tote. And so I felt like, okay, even if we were stuck in the rain somewhere, I could throw it in one of these bags and it would be okay. And I'm glad that I ended up there because it didn't rain at all. Like, we maybe had a couple of sprinkles on the first day that we were there, but nothing where I was ever like, oh, my camera's not gonna survive this. So yeah, I'm glad that I didn't let that hold me back, and I'm glad that I ended up bringing this camera because I think it was perfect. I love some of the photos and videos that I was able to capture with it, and yeah, every time I use it, which surprisingly lately has felt like less and less, maybe just because I've been doing more professional work on my Sony a7 IV, and then whenever I do like a quick weekend trip, I'll usually take one of the Fuji cameras or a film camera. But every time I pick up the Lumix GX85, it feels really good, and I can't believe the price point. Like, it punches above its weight for sure. So yeah, I'm hoping to make another video about our entire trip to Japan, include some of the DJI Pocket 3 footage, as well as talk about some of the things that we learned, some of our experiences, maybe some tips and tricks for people who are considering visiting Japan. And then I also desperately want to make a DJI Pocket 3 review. And so hopefully that will be coming soon. We are moving in the next month or so, and so I'm not sure how often I'll be able to upload or to create videos, but I am very excited to get into a new space where hopefully we don't have as much road noise and the light can be more consistent, all sorts of stuff. But if you have anything that you would like me to review, any of my gear that you would like me to talk about more, definitely just let me know. And yeah, I'll catch you in the next one. Ciao.
Thank you. 恐れ入ります。時間になりました。出口までお進みください。Sorry, time is over. Thank you.